Welcome to the Streets and People podcast, where we explore having more transport options that are less hassle to use. Hosted by Get Around Caboolture, we bring you 3 types of episodes. People and Projects share stories of change. Not Everyone Drives gives voice to non-drivers. Road Rules 360 unpacks road rules for people outside a car. Music by Grand Project, and let's make our Grand Project reimagining streets made for people. Today we're doing one of our Not Everyone Drives episodes, and I always love these episodes because it's about people who are using public transport, active transport. So active transport is scooters, bikes and walking. I'm here in the studio with Tam, and Tam I know because she's joined our group. I always reach out to people who are new and say, how did you find out about us? And then we met at the library trying to do an interview. Then we bumped into each other at Bicycle Queensland at one of their meetings. And then we thought, oh yeah, we must do that interview. So we had some technical issues the first time. I'm here on Gubbi Gubbi country in Caboolture in Queensland. And Tam, whereabouts are you?
I'm in Turrbal Yagara country in Brisbane. Thanks for having me on your podcast. It's very exciting and I'm very passionate about active transport and public transport.
So what made you interested in joining us, I guess, and how did you find out about us? Because I think you have in-laws around this area.
Initially, I saw a group pop up. It must have been a shared link, perhaps from one of the other local advocates. I think they're doing better streets for Ashgrove, so I live near there. And then I saw, oh, there's a group that's looking at the northern part of Brisbane, and I thought, well, I do have family up there, so it's really interesting to see there's advocates for places that are not as close to the city, which I think it's amazing. I was very interested in that and just keeping an eye on the activities going on up there.
Thank you. So you're particularly interested in cycling. When you say cycling, is it more riding your bike around places, or is it a fitness? Is it recreation? Is it more transport, shopping, that sort of thing?
So it is a bit of everything, actually. I used to ride my bike to work, and I had a road bike. The idea was to go quickly along the bikeway, and then I was pregnant, so I could no longer ride. It's an awkward position to be riding if you're pregnant, and I really wished for an upright bike. That's something that's a bit more casual and comfortable. So I actually sold my bike when I was pregnant, which is quite a sad thing to do. It was my 30th birthday present from my husband. And yeah, going back to when we first met, we used to ride for fun and ride around West End and the city and go on dates and ride around. Yeah, it's a really fun way to be active and see Brisbane. So after I sold my bike, I thought, what am I going to do? I still want to ride my bike. It's just a great way to get around. And I thought, oh, maybe we could look into cargo bikes, because I'd seen things about the Dutch riding around with their children in the front, and I thought that's such an amazing way to get around with your family. I mentioned this to my husband and said, we need to get a cargo bike. And so when our kids are big enough, like maybe around 1 year old, perhaps we could take the kids around on the bike. And we made that wish come true. So we just did some research and we got a bike last year, actually. We have a cargo bike. I've been riding it for the past year. We take the kids to daycare, then I go on to work. I do my shopping with it. We go on fun rides just for fun. We go to the park and the kids love it. It's just been so life-changing. Didn't realize how much of an impact it would make to our lives, and it's just made me more passionate about getting safer streets for everyone, because my dream is for my kids to be able to ride to school and for them to just ride independently when they're a bit older, to have a fun time exploring the streets. I've been trying to advocate for better bike lanes ever since I had the idea of getting a cargo bike, because I know these things take a long time, and yeah, it's really important for me that our streets are safe for my family.
When you say your cargo bike, we had 2 episodes on our show. One was with Johanna. She's got a Buckfits. It's one of the ones with the big box at the front.
Yes.
To be very adaptable, and that's been really good for 3 children. Travis was on and he thought about doing the back fits, and then he decided it wasn't quite right. Which sort of bike did you get? Did you get the one with the box at the front?
Yeah, we do. I'd always wanted one of those with a box in the front because I felt more confident having my children low down. They couldn't fall out. They were in a box, they had seat belts, and they could see ahead and I could watch them. And I also think it's great for the younger kids because they can fall asleep in there. I wouldn't be very comfortable not being able to see my little ones on the back, but it's also been really versatile because I can chuck in all the shopping, I can chuck in the backpacks, and works as a cyclable wagon as well. So it's been really helpful. The only downside is it's quite long. I've tried to look into traveling further with it on the train, but I don't think I would be able to fit it in a lift, and I'd have to figure out which train stations you can just roll onto the platform. So that's a bit tricky. So we're actually looking at a second bike. We love having a bike so much for the kids that we're looking for a shorter bike with seats on the back because our kids are getting a bit older now, and we've got one going to school, one going to daycare, so we're going to need two bikes so we can each do different drop-offs. Just having that first bike has really changed our lives and has driven us to go and get another one.
I have a big cargo bike, so I've got a box at the front and a box at the back.
Yeah.
I don't have children, so mine is all for groceries and running errands and things like that. My bike got stolen, and I got a message from one of your in-laws.
Oh, right.
Kindly reached out to me and said, I heard about your bike and I'm really sorry to hear that, and if there's anything I can do to help.
Oh, that's so lovely. I didn't even know that.
The person was completely delightful, and I guess that's what I'm trying to do with Get Around Caboolture, is to make this about the community. We're so disconnected from everybody, so this is part of the very human connected experience that I'm trying to bring in. When my bicycle got stolen, Johanna, with the buck fits, the big long box, she lent me her buck fits for a couple of days, and I was surprised at how long it was, and I found it a bit unwieldy. I found after 2 days I did get better at it, but I definitely found it a little bit unwieldy. That surprised me, and I can definitely see your concern with how would you fit that on the train, because mine goes on the train, no problem, but it's very big compared to most bikes, so I can see where you would be going with that.
It does take a bit of getting used to, and it does have a big turning circle, so if you want to make a turn on a street on the footpath, that can be particularly tricky at times.
And then you mentioned about taking the kids to school. We also had somebody called Rachel Gallagher on the show, and she has actually created a questionnaire, so you can go into her questionnaire, create that with the other parents at the school, and ask them to complete about the physical barriers. So that's on our website, and I'm happy to share that with you.
Oh, I'm very keen to advocate. Once school starts, I'm going to be there looking for safer streets and perhaps even starting a bike bus or a walking group. Yeah, because we're within the catchment, and I'm sure plenty of other children are, and we could all walk in or ride in together.
So you should be able to reach out to council to see about getting bikes to school programs. I know that that's something that they are keen to develop. They just need parents who are willing to be the engine, and they will help the facilitation. So I'm saying this to our listener in case they also would like to create a bike bus or get the kids riding bikes to school. What is the infrastructure like in your area? Because Brisbane's got better infrastructure than Caboolture, as you know.
Yeah, thinking about walking or cycling route to the future school, I would only be comfortable with the kids on the footpath. The streets are typically 50 kilometres an hour, which I think is still very fast for how narrow some of the streets are. And yeah, I'd be quite uncomfortable with my kids on the road. They do have some white bikes painted on the road. I don't find that drivers are very considerate. I do ride on those, but then they turn into car parks, like street parking. So you do end up having to be on the road with the cars. So for me, I think I'd be comfortable enough with the cargo bike dropping my children to school, but I would be a bit concerned about them riding, and I'd have to find the safest best route. I would say you cross at this crosswalk here, and then you cross over to this little island here. It's funny, I actually made a spreadsheet when looking at schools. How many roads do they have to cross? Do they have a crosswalk? Is there a lollipop lady? Because I am really keen for them to be independent and walk to school when they're old enough, but I am also concerned about their safety, which is why I am keen to start a walking group, because I know safety is in numbers, and if you could have a volunteer parent with them, then I would feel a lot more comfortable with them doing that.
I know that councils are keen to do them, but they do need the parents to be engaged to make that happen. It has to come from the parents at the schools, definitely. We had Tim Gill on recently, and he's all about children being able to be free. He said a rather shocking term. He said children are today basically raised in captivity. And if you think about it, they go from the home where they're surveilled, they go into a car where they're surveilled, they go to the shops or the school, it's all under surveillance. You go, wow, that's actually quite true, that it's all under surveillance, no freedom, no sense of agency away from that. And it does create children who are more fearful. So it's great that you're keen to break away from the model and from the current trend. I know that there is a thing where some parents will judge you for being unsafe and being a bad mother. How do you expect to go with that?
I think I'm pretty steadfast in my beliefs. I am not that concerned about what other people think. I've had experience as a bit of a free range kid, riding my bike around the streets and playing with my siblings in the parks by ourselves. And I do have to let go a little bit, and you will worry as a parent, but just thinking back to myself as a kid, I know that I had those feelings of a bit of responsibility because I was by myself. And yeah, it's nice that our parents trusted us, so you didn't want to break that trust. For example, my parents would say, okay, you can ride on these streets, but not the main road. When I was living in a little village, we would all walk the streets, and my parents said, you must be back when the clock strikes 5. So that's what we did. You'd be in big trouble if you didn't follow the rules. But the benefit of that is that you got a bit of time to yourself and you could play with your friends. It was all about trust, I suppose. I would try to talk about the benefits, and I'd encourage parents who are a bit concerned. I guess I would offer to do it with them and bring their kids along as well. I think it is a bit about educating as well.
You're interested in buses and trains as well. You have a professional role in that, and you're not at all speaking from that platform at all. You're not representing an organisation. What is it that makes you interested about buses and trains, trams?
There were multiple times when my parents didn't actually own a car, and we would walk around. We'd walk to the shops. There were times when I was in kindy, there was a kindy bus that would pick me up. I would wait at the bus stop with my mum, and then I'd get on the bus. There'd be a teacher on the bus. I had that freedom from a very young age. I didn't really have any fears about getting on buses and trains. I lived in Sydney. We lived close to a train station. We caught the buses to school. We didn't own a car. We'd just get a taxi whenever we'd need one. And then in Brisbane, I used to catch the bus to uni. I used to catch the bus to work at the shops. I remember clearly when it became a 15-minute service. I remember seeing the tags on the bus saying this will be a buzz trial, which is a bus upgrade zone, and it went from 30 minutes to 15 minutes all day, and I would catch that one to the city to go to uni. And I didn't buy my car when I was 15 as soon as I could buy one. I bought it when I was 21, I think, so I got by without having a car. It's a big investment for a young person to buy a car, to pay for fuel, to pay for servicing. I was able to save up and then buy a good enough car that was reliable and low maintenance. It was great that as a young person, I didn't have to drive everywhere. I could go out and have a drink and not worry about where am I going to leave my car. I find getting around in public transport, you get to know your city really well. You get to know the local bus drivers. You see different characters. Once there was someone playing their guitar on the bus on the way home, and it was actually quite pleasant. And people said, "Oh, can you play this?" It's those kinds of things that you don't get when you're in a car. The other thing is my kids really don't like long car trips. They're strapped in, they can't move around. So we catch the buses and trains, and they love me interacting with them on our journeys. I don't know, it's something about kids that love buses and trains. And I've still got that with me. I think it's part of my life. It's a way of life, a way of getting around.
So you mentioned a bus trial, is that right? Where it went from 15 minutes to 30 minutes. Does that mean the bus came every 15 minutes, or does that mean the bus journey took 15 minutes?
Oh, it was how often it came. It used to come every 30 minutes, and then it would come every 15. So I just used it for work. I would just go to the bus stop, knew the bus would come within 7 or 8 minutes. It wouldn't be much of a wait. It was super convenient. And I find that's what's really helpful with getting around. But when the frequencies are so low, it's very inconvenient. We need more places that have routes along every main road. You can just hop on and arrive at a bus stop and know that there will be a bus there. I find it very frustrating. I tried to catch the train to Palmwoods on the weekend, and then there were no buses running because it was the weekend. And I thought, that is really strange. Like, why would you just not run buses because it's a weekend? People still travel. And this has happened to me numerous times. I've wanted to catch a bus on a weekend and it didn't exist. That's another thing I'm passionate about, is actually having a service available so people can use it and have the choice.
I'm not familiar with where Palmwoods is.
It's on the Sunshine Coast hinterland. It has a train station and it's got a little village around the station. I was unable to go beyond the station. It was only, I think, maybe 3 kilometres away that I needed to get to, and there was a bus stop near this place I needed to get to, but I couldn't because it was a Saturday. So it was very frustrating, and I wish I could have fit my cargo bike on the train, because I would have avoided sitting in traffic for nearly 2 hours.
You know, the other thing is that people with disabilities, kids, if you want to get to a friend who lives there, how do you get there? It's not straightforward if there's no bus service. We did have Jonathan English on the show, and he talked about how to get a good bus service. Basically, it's exactly what you say. It's every 15 minutes. So as long as you have a frequent enough service, there's a lot of talk that density is a problem. So if you have low density, it doesn't justify the service. But that's actually turns out to be a bit of a furphy. You just need to have people using it. You put it in when you create the suburban area, and then you do it and more people will use it. When you have a bus service that is frequent, connects to services, so connects to the train before the train leaves and it leaves after the train arrives, those sorts of things make a huge difference, definitely. So you were talking about you now go everywhere by bicycle pretty much where you can, and did you drop the second car? Normally if there's a 2-car household, someone gets a cargo bike, an e-bike, they stop using the second car. Is that what happened to you?
Well, we used to have 2 cars. We already got rid of the second car, and we thought, oh, well, it would actually be helpful to have another vehicle. It kind of is like our second car. So it happened in the reverse. We first got rid of the second car, got a cargo bike maybe a couple of years later. Yeah, looking to get the next bike. I have suggested that we probably don't need this car anymore, because you've got the ongoing running costs, rego and insurance and maintenance. It's quite expensive to just have a car, and we don't use it that much, and we're paying thousands of dollars a year just to have it in the garage. It's hard. My husband thinks it's convenient when you actually need a car. I guess the other thing that would be ideal is to have the car share kind of services available in key hubs, so that when you do need a car, you just rent it or book it in advance, and then you know you can have it. But I guess having the flexibility of the car there is something that is helpful as well. So
there is a car share service. I'm not going to mention the name because I don't do any promotion of any companies at all, but it is a familiar name to anybody who's gotten a taxi for sure. Basically, many people, they just wanted to get a bit of cash for their car, so they would rent it out. You could either do that for others if your husband doesn't want to sell it, or you can just use somebody else's car. That will be available in your street. It is a little bit expensive. I was using it before, but I have a very low income, so for me it was a barrier having it at that extra cost. But it makes you really aware of how much it costs to run a car, because it's still cheaper. If I hired a car one weekend a month, then that would be break even. It's about $10,000 to $15,000 a year per car. I think it's actually a little bit higher depending on how big your car is and how new the model is, because it's actually a huge cost that people don't realize that they're having to pay for. So that's a big one. And most cars today, I think they're just designed to last 10 years.
having kids, it is a bit trickier because we need to have the car seats as well. Yeah, which is why I love to try and catch the buses, because if we're traveling, then you don't have to worry about the car seats because you don't need them on a bus or a train. So yeah, it's very accessible for families to be able to catch a bus or train as well.
Yeah, one of my bugbears about the buses in Brisbane, for some reason, they have this idea that you can't have bike racks on a bus. I don't know what that is. The ACT has them, and Toronto has this extensive bus service. It's the most effective bus service in the whole of North America. And they have bike racks on all their buses. For some strange idea, there's a lot of fear that their bikes or scooters are going to catch a flame. I asked Jonathan actually whether there had been anything like that, and he said no. He looked at me somewhat strangely. I think it's the bus company who decides whether to put racks on or not. I think they're losing a lot of passengers by the fact that they don't have bike racks and scooter racks, because they could easily. What do you think about that?
There has been times when my husband did need to go further than just a walk from the bus stop at the end destination. So he did try to take the scooter on. Yeah, and he couldn't, because I think, yeah, it was a safety risk with the battery in the scooter, which it is a shame. But yeah, I'm not an expert on like the safety aspects of these things. But I really think if that can't happen, is there a way that we can expand the bike hire or scooter hire network so that people have options? Because it's usually the last few kilometers, which is my case on the weekend. I could make 80% or 90% of my journey on the train, but then the last few kilometers, I couldn't get there. So it's really important that we have better connectivity for people that don't want to drive.
Imagine somebody is a decision maker in the bus company or state government. What do you see would be really valuable for you, for them to reconsider as a policy, or something you think, oh, that would actually be really good if they took that up? What do you suggest?
For me, at the moment, it really is about having that network for walking and cycling, because it doesn't exist. I'm very lucky in Brisbane. I live close to a bikeway that's completely separated, but that's the only one that can get me to work, and I have to go on the road to actually get onto it. So there isn't actually a network. I feel like someone like me who wants to ride has been completely forgotten, that no one has considered how someone who wants to ride can get around safely. That's really what I would like, is just to see more investment in safe cycle routes and for people to walk or scoot or wheel or roll that are not on the road and go to places that people want to go, not just to work, but to the shops and to the parks. We have a road network, but we don't have a bicycle network. We need the investment in that. It doesn't have to be a very expensive, shiny bikeway. We just need to plan properly and make sure we've included the walking and active modes in all the planning.
Some places are going down to 30 kilometres an hour. How do you feel about 30 kilometres an hour on suburban streets, on your local street?
Yeah, I think that is a really good solution to some of these routes. So, for example, near where I live, we've got a route that has a bike painted on the road, but you have to share it with the cars, and it's not fun for a cyclist or a driver to be rolling slowly. We could ask for bike lanes on these kind of roads, but then you've got local businesses that are concerned about losing parking. I think a really good compromise is to make those streets safer. So put in the wombat crossings, raised crossings, have pedestrian islands where people can go between the businesses on both sides of the roads and get across safely, and lower the speed limits. And then people are slowing down, they're looking at the businesses. It's a much more pleasant place to walk with your children and browse the shops and sit on the alfresco side of the road and not having cars speeding by. Yeah, I really love that idea of having lower speed limits. The main strip near us, it's 50 kilometers an hour. I think that's still too fast. It needs to be 40 or 30. Yeah, I do support the lower speed limits in the right places.
If somebody is in your area, so you're in the Ashgrove area, is that right?
Yeah, Paddington.
So if somebody's in that area and would be interested in collaborating with you, should they maybe get in contact with us and then we can forward on your details?
Yeah, I think that's the best approach.
I do think that when you team up with others, you definitely get a better outcome.
Definitely.
Because we're coming up to the end of time. Is there anything else you would like to add, or any other things that you would like to suggest that people like council or state does, or the bus company or the train company or anything?
I'd just love to see some more trials of some pop-up bike lanes happen. That's one thing I've been trying to advocate for in my community, because it is a very fine balance. We do have local businesses which I do like to support, and I wouldn't like to get them offside by suggesting we have bike lanes which would take away their parking. So I would just love to trial it one day, noting that on a game day they have very limited timing for parking. So I thought, well, that's a low impact time when people can't park there anyway. Could we do a pop-up and just see how it goes? There's so many people walking down the streets, some on scooters. Wouldn't it be great to separate the faster scooters and bikes and actually provide another option for all of these spectators? Because I've tried to ride on the footpath during a game day and it's impossible. So I have to ride on the road. So I'd love to see a pop-up bike lane on those kind of event days, and it would set us up to see what we could do for the Olympics as well. We need to start thinking about better ways to get large crowds of people moving. I'm very keen to do a trial like that. It doesn't have to be permanent. We can just see how it goes. So I'd love to do that in different places.
One of my questions that I've been thinking about is, how come only cars get good infrastructure? No one else gets good infrastructure. Rail is kept to a minimum, buses are kept to a minimum, bicycle paths to a minimum, footpaths to a minimum, and the car gets maximum and it takes up more and more space. I just go, what is that? And I don't know. How do you feel about what I've just said?
Yeah, I really do think there is an imbalance, especially when I did start riding and when I started riding with the kids as well. I did feel very left out because I do drive as well, and there's always a road leading to somewhere and you're safe. That's how I feel. I feel like I'm a car on the train tracks when I'm on the road because I'm behind a really fast vehicle that could kill me. Yeah, I do wonder, why is there an imbalance? I guess it's changed from the beginning of time when the streets were for people. They would walk everywhere. Then there was the period when the bikes became normal. Yeah, ever since the motor vehicle has existed, it's just been more and more focus on that's how everyone gets around. It's a cultural thing, I think, because you can go to other cities. Yeah, I have not been to Europe, but I'm always dreaming of going to Europe where I can cycle safely everywhere. I've lived in Japan. I've gotten around on buses and trains, and I've lived in a rural area and there was really good public transport. You don't have to be in a big city like Tokyo to have good public transport. I just think we need a better balance so that everyone's considered how they get around.
Yeah, one of the things that people say to me, I've just been to Tokyo, I've just been to Japan, it's amazing, it's amazing. The public transport here is amazing. Being able to cycle and walk, I love it. You know, we haven't got street parking everywhere. People love how easy it is to get around, and they love the fact that it's not so car heavy.
And it's even in their movies and their cartoons, kids and adults getting around on bikes, getting on the train. It's normal. It's normalized. Here, it's not really normal. You feel like a bit of an oddball.
For sure. I totally get where you're coming from. All right. Anything else you would like to share before we wrap it up?
It's been really good to talk about what I'm really passionate about. Thank you for including me in your podcast.
It's great because I don't really know you. I've met you a couple of times and we've had a little bit of an exchange on one of the social media platforms. It's really nice to have a little bit more awareness about what your interests are and how you perceive it. And I think you bring some really good points about, well, what is it like when you have a family, and how is it to want to ride the kids to school, want the kids to be independent. It's actually really hard. I think what you're doing is fantastic.
Thank you. I think what you're doing is amazing as well. Like, you've kicked this off all on your own, it seems. It's amazing what passion can do.
Absolutely. And if it's what you want, you just need to connect in with others and find the channel that works for you. So I know other advocates write blogs, the engineering blogs, and I work better because I'm a more sociable person with podcasts and events. I think choose your channel, what it is that works for you, and then take it from there. For you, for instance, with the kids biking to school, anything and everything is really fantastic.
Yeah, and I don't want to be disruptive at all. It's just about getting better streets, safer streets for everyone, really.
Absolutely, 100%. Just nice to sort of feel like I wasn't being run over all the time. Just that. I get it. All right.
Yeah, or in the pedestrian's way, being a nuisance.
Yeah, and who wants to be seen like that, for sure. All right. Thanks so much, Tam. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much. No worries. Thanks for having me. See you.
Thank you for listening to the Streets and People podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone who'd find it helpful. Your small action could make a big difference. We're on all the usual podcasting platforms, so don't miss a single story. To find out what else we do, check out getaroundcaboolture.au. Until next time, remember, there's more than one way to get where you're going. Keep moving, keep listening, and keep imagining streets made for people.